is sponsored by Library Bound and organized by BCLA's Readers Advisory Interest Group. My name is Robbie Burma, and I'm the co-chair of the Readers Advisory Interest Group, along with Jenny Fry. I'm also the head of the Mount Pleasant branch of VPL. I would like to recognize that we are gathered on traditional territories of the Coast Salish people. So you can see we've gone green. Our program for today will be projected up behind us. We hope to have a coffee break around 10:30. We have provided coffee and tea and water and some treats over there, so please help yourself. And on a housekeeping note, if there's an emergency, please exit by the 2 doors over here and then go upstairs and out the doors. The washrooms are just out the doors here to your right. And it would be really nice if you turned off your phones. We also have a hashtag for tweeting that you will see that projects up here. We're going to start this morning with David Wright. He's from the Reader Services Department of Seattle Public Library's Central Branch. He is a Reader's Advisory Librarian. He loves to converse with people about books and help them find another good read. And he finds this fun and challenging work, which we all do. He also writes and edits book lists and posts for Seattle Public Library's blog, Shelf Talk. And he is also a frequent contributor and reviewer and columnist for Novelist, Book List, Library Journal, Kirkus, and many more. He is also a speaker and presenter at lots of conferences like ALA, PLA, WLA, OLA, PNLA, BEA, CAL. Thank you, David, that's very impressive. He also does an adult story time called Thrilling Tales. And I believe he's going to start our session this morning with a treat in the theme of Halloween, I say treat. So please join me in welcoming David Wright and give him a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. Well, let me see here. Get my slides here and then we'll have a story. Yeah, I am going to be talking about Reader's Advisory, but it being the Halloween season, I'll start things off with a very short story. As was mentioned, I do a regular program in our library called Thrilling Tales, a story time for grown-ups. It's really popular and one that I'm quite proud of and enjoy doing. So just for a brief little, like 3-minute story to set the tone. This one is called A Face in the Dark, and it's by Ruskin Bond. It may give you some idea of rural humor if I begin this tale with an anecdote that concerns me. I was walking alone through a village at night when I met an old man carrying a lantern. I found to my surprise that the old man was blind. "Old man," I asked, "if you cannot see, why do you carry a lantern?" "I carry this," he replied, "so that fools do not stumble against me in the dark." This incident has only a slight connection with the story that follows, but I think it provides the right sort of tone and setting. Mr. Oliver, an Anglo-Indian teacher, was returning to his school late one night on the outskirts of the hill station of Simla. The school was conducted on English public school lines, and the boys, most of them from well-to-do Indian families, wore blazers, caps, and ties. Life magazine, in a feature on India, had once called this school the Eden of the East. Mr. Oliver had been teaching in the school for several years. He is no longer there. The Simla Bazaar, with its cinemas and restaurants, was about 2 miles from the school, and Mr. Oliver, a bachelor, usually strolled into town in the evening, returning after dark when he would take a shortcut through a pine forest. When there was a strong wind, the pine trees made sad, eerie sounds that kept most people to the main road. But Mr. Oliver was not a nervous or imaginative man. He carried a torch, and on the night I write of, its pale gleam, the batteries were running down, moved fitfully over the narrow forest path. When its flickering light fell on the figure of a boy who was sitting alone on a rock, Mr. Oliver stopped. Boys were not supposed to be out of school after 7 p.m., and it was now well past 9. "What are you doing out here, boy?" asked Mr. Oliver sharply, moving closer so that he could recognize the miscreant. But even as he approached the boy, Mr. Oliver sensed that something was wrong. The boy appeared to be crying. His head hung down. He held his face in his hands, and his body shook convulsively. It was a strange, soundless weeping, and Mr. Oliver felt distinctly uneasy. "Well, what's the matter?" he asked, his anger giving way to concern. "What are you crying for?" The boy would not answer or look up. His body continued to be racked with silent sobbing. "Well, come on, boy, you shouldn't be out here at this hour. Tell me the trouble. Look up!" The boy looked up. He took his hands from his face and looked up at his teacher. The light from Mr. Oliver's torch fell on the boy's face, if you could call it a face. He had no eyes, ears, nose, or mouth. It was just a round, smooth head with a school cap on top of it. And that's where the story should end, as it indeed has for several people who have had similar experiences and dropped dead of inexplicable heart attacks. But for Mr. Oliver, it did not end there. The torch fell from his trembling hand. He turned and scrambled down the path, running blindly through the trees and calling for help. He was still running towards the school buildings when he saw a lantern swinging in the middle of the path. Mr. Oliver had never before been so pleased to see the night watchman. He stumbled up to the watchman, gasping for breath and speaking incoherently. "What is it, Sahib?" asked the watchman. "Has there been an accident? Why are you running?" "I saw something horrible, a boy weeping in the forest, and he had no face." "No face, Sahib? No eyes, nose, mouth, nothing?" "Do you mean it was like this, Sahib?" asked the watchman, and raised the lamp to his own face. The watchman had no eyes, no ears, no features at all, not even an eyebrow. The wind blew the lamp out, and Mr. Oliver had his heart attack. That's it. We'll now get to talking about Reader's Advisory. So, as you've heard, let me see, I'm going to figure out how this works. Yeah, okay. This is me, and this is where I work. How many people have been to the library where I work? Yeah, it's kind of a thing. It's one of those interesting sorts of places. It's a lot like the building we're in now, only much more so, in probably good and bad ways. Here's another view of it. I work on the 3rd floor of this building. This is the 5th Avenue entrance, and it's basically a city block size floor that's mostly just fiction. The department I work for, as you've heard, is called the Reader Services Department. It was formerly the Fiction Department. And very often we're the only librarians on that floor. There is a team desk on that floor that's staffed limited hours, but we're out there, out in the middle of it, doing Reader's Advisory. And because I work in such a big library, my gig, I'm well aware, is not typical. We have a lot of specialization. I'm a long ways away from where the nonfiction is, which is some floors up. So our department really specializes in serving readers. Reader's Advisory and other aspects of reader services, sort of a hothouse flower, I'll say, which makes me a really bad reference librarian. A lot of those skills have kind of atrophied for me, but I do spend a lot of time, and have for really 10 years, thinking about how we serve readers and kind of trying to do that. every day. In the program notes, first of all, I was joking with Jennifer because I'm the Keynote, which I think is the first time I've been a Keynote, and they conjured up all these images of like being a TED Talk and saying all kinds of horrible, putting lots of graphs and charts and telling you what the future's going to be, and but I'm going to try not to do that. These three words appeared in the sort of description about what I'm going to be talking about: inspiration, innovation, and collaboration. Boy, it already sounds like a TED Talk, doesn't it? But I want to admit something. The word innovation sort of bugs me. I don't know if anybody else has this response. And it may be because I hear it a lot, just in my immediate surroundings. It's used a lot, and usually when it's used in ways that aren't really all that meaningful. We actually recently formed an innovation committee in our library, which is, it's a little oxymoronic, but there you go. But I do want to begin by thanking you all for some inspiration. Just seeing you here and the work you guys are doing with this committee. We used to have a committee in my area called the Puget Sound Readers Advisory Roundtable that met quarterly, and it was this kind of a group, although we never really got this many people together. And it was a great thing, and I really kind of miss it. It was a terrible acronym, however, PUZRART. At one time, for a very brief period of time, they decided to change reading table to group, which resulted in an even worse acronym. That's right. So then I was chair for a while, and we changed it to the Readers Advisors of Puget Sound, which at least is kind of a word you can say. And then a few years ago, it sort of died out, and I was really sad about that. One of the chairs just didn't really keep it up, and it wasn't affiliated with the state organization. So seeing your guys' efforts, although I'm not, and it's an acronym, it's not an acronym, but I really, this is really important that you guys are doing this. It really is an opportunity that it's great that you've made for yourself, and I hope you keep it going because it's rare. So I'm starting to talk now with some people where I am at the Washington Library Association about maybe forming a subgroup and restarting what we do in our area. And I confess I'm partly motivated because if we do it under their auspices and under one of their interest groups, and I get to call it the Readers Advisory Group, then we will be WashRAIG, which I would so love to belong to something called WashRAIG. So watch the skies for WashRAIG, and I will keep in touch with some of you folks here, and maybe we can, if we get off the ground, we can have some events and things like that. So I am going to talk in a little while about some of the stuff we've done at Seattle Public Library with online Readers Advisory and social media and things like that. And it may be some of you are already doing things like that. Is anybody here doing like forms-based Readers Advisory in their library? Oh, okay, cool. But I want to begin by just saying that just doing Readers Advisory in your library, to any kind of standard of trying to be good at it, is itself innovative. There's been a lot of literature and a lot of conferencing and stuff about this, and maybe for some of us it's kind of like, okay, yeah, and we're always kind of looking for what's the new shiny thing and what's the fresh angle on it. But to most people out there in the world, the idea that you could come into a library and actually get help finding something good to read from a human being who has dedicated some attention to this and is ostensibly something of an expert, or at least is going to try and help you on your behalf, not to sell you anything, that is really, really innovative to people. To many of our patrons, and certainly to a lot of our non-patrons who just have no idea that this is something that you can get. And in my experience, when they find out, are really kind of thrilled and excited by that. So I guess I just want to emphasize, beyond whatever new spins we put on it or however else we do it, just the effort kind of day by day to do this and get better at it and make our libraries places where this happens is innovative. People definitely recognize. Now, I'm not going to talk about how to do Readers Advisory. I do love to recommend this book, though, if anybody is familiar with it, Readers Advisory Service in the Public Library, which is sort of the Bible of Readers Advisory. Like the Bible, it's very dense and kind of dry, but it's really good. So if this is something that you want to do in your life and you want to do it better, this book is really good that way. I did an article once called Zen and the Art of Readers Advisory, and the inspiration for it was there's a thing in Zen called, and I'm not gonna, don't even fully understand it, but beginner's mind, right? What is it, Shoshan or something like that? But beginner's mind. And I'm in love with that concept, not just for life, but for the work we do. In my experience, there's two things that really are big challenges for people trying to do reader's advisory. One is a complete and utter lack of confidence. Like we're really scared of the work, we feel like frauds, we feel like, oh, we're not that great expert or that maven or that wonderful person, who are we to, we don't know enough. That kind of response, which some of you may be familiar with, I certainly am. The other one is kind of the opposite way of going wrong, which is we are really kind of comfortable with it. And maybe if you're that person in your library who has gotten a certain amount of comfort and ease with talking with readers to the extent where people turn to you, because the minute you sort of start to do reader's advisory and are comfortable with it, a lot of the rest of the staff are like, oh, that's the person, okay, this is the person who does this, because they don't want to have to deal with it. So then everybody kind of talks about how, oh, you're the book person. And you kind of start to believe that. And that's also a real problem for doing reader's advisory. Because expertise, I think, is sort of a two-edged sword. We need to use it in our profession, in our organizations. We need to be really pushing the fact that we have expertise and that is something that is valued and that people will, come to their libraries for the fact that there are people who know what they're doing. We need to do that. But then we have to be really careful about not believing that hype and getting complacent, because in my experience, reader's advisory is the kind of thing, kind of the challenge and the beauty of it is you're continually learning. You can never really learn enough. There's always more to learn. The nice aspect of it is a conversation, and I'm sure you've had workshops about, not freighting it with all this importance that it's this big, make or break, you get one chance to find the perfect book atop the mountaintop kind of thing. What we're really doing is just talking with people about books, and people will give us a lot of credit just for trying. I know this for a fact because when I've taught reader's advisory, I'm one of those horrible teachers who sends their students out into the community and has them go to libraries and try and get help finding a good book. And the one thing, as you can imagine, the kind of help they get is ranges from excellent to horrible, of course. But the one thing I'm struck by over and over is how much credit they're willing to give people just for trying. People really, really love it when you just try, and you get more than one chance to do this right if you're doing it right. So anyway, I'm just going on. So I think beginner's mind is a really good concept to embrace with regards to reader's advisory, and that is trying to approach it fresh, trying to wear whatever experience and learning and stuff you're getting lightly, and to treat the library sort of like a laboratory. We read articles, we try and keep up with the literature, we attend workshops and things like that, but there's often a real distance between that stuff and then we go back to work and we do what we do all day, and that doesn't change much. And I think it's good to be playful with that. And you read an article that says, here, try this, and you go, okay, actually, today I'm going to try that, and I'm just going to do this thing and see how it works out. Breaking that sort of distance between what we read about reader's advisory and learn about it and what we actually do, I think is key. Part of our job, and this may be something that sort of annoys us sometimes, is to preach to our own library systems and our administrators and our boards and all of that stuff. This is an article that's in Novelist, why reader's advisory is important from a director's point of view. It's 10 years old, but it's a good article, and it just kind of points out a lot of the things you'd expect. I know when I first got into libraries, I actually sort of resented that. I was sort of like, what? The people who run this place don't actually know what it's for and why people come here and all that. And I'm like, well, what's the deal? Now, libraries differ in terms of that. Very often, you have someone running the place who does. But this is our job to kind of spread the word about this and how important the work is, and we need to be doing that. It's not that hard to do because we've got mountains and mountains of evidence that just kind of keeps coming out in support of both the role of libraries and librarians and reader services in particular. This is the thing from Christian Science Monitor that was quoting results from the Pew studies. Keep up with the Pew internet studies because they're great. They did a recent one looking at, I think, 18 to 24-year-olds, and there was some interesting data. This is getting kind of TED Talky, I'm sorry. But 80% of Americans under 30 say it's very important for there to be librarians in the library. That's data. You can use that. 75% say that it's really important for there to be books like in the library. I love this, the bottom line here. People in that age range were asked about moving books or stacks out of public locations. And you can see there's a pretty strong negative. Like, about half of people went, huh? But more than did and said, no, don't get rid of them. Please keep the books. So I think that's persuasive. Has anybody here seen, I don't know if it played up here, this movie, Robot and Frank? Okay, this is my film recommendation for you today. Robot and Frank. It's a really charming movie. It's the kind of movie you can watch with like a parent or a child. I think there's a little profanity, but it's really, really a charming movie. And there's a great subplot that you'll all appreciate about, it's sort of set like 8 years in the future, like in the very near future. And there's this whole subplot about the library being taken over by these innovative people who are trying to change it into a library experience. And it has to do with, among other things, emptying all the books out of the library. Anyway, this is a really delicious movie, and I think a lot of you would appreciate it. We've done some surveying too, and we found that a lot of our younger users really want help finding good stuff to read. We got pretty strong support. This was from teenagers, and half of them said, yes, it's really important to me, like the most important thing, to have librarians there and to be getting book recommendations. So, data. I love this quote. This was from one of our young patrons, right? I wish there were more librarians in my favorite episodes. This is an ad campaign from a bookstore in our town, the University Bookstore in Seattle. And they got it right. These are not models, these are their booksellers, right? And they are marketing the people that work there. Because, of course, if you're in a war with Amazon, what do you have that Amazon doesn't have? Human beings, passionate human beings who want to talk with you and will relate to you and maybe even flirt with you or whatever, but they're real and you like to talk to them. So I love that, and I wish more libraries did this too in terms of featuring staff. This is just a pretentious slide about story and how central it is to who we are as human beings and our existence on Earth. And this is a really good book about that, The Tale Tellers by Nancy Houston, if you want to read more about that. So, Forms-Based Reader's Advisory. This is kind of a hot topic, at least, and there's some classes and articles being written. There was something in Library Journal recently about it. We've been doing it at Seattle Public Library for a while. I want to begin by saying that we're talking about online reader's advisory, but everything we're talking about could be done offline as well. A form is just a form, and it can be on paper, it can be Xeroxed off and put on the desk. So if this is not something you can approach in an online way, you can still do it offline. And in fact, when we started doing this kind of thing at my library, it was more just as a follow-up to the live conversations we would have with people. I would be talking with a reader and I'd pull some books, like 3 books, and increasingly I just thought, this is great, and we had a nice time, and they took 2 of the books and they're going to come back and tell me about it, but I really want to do more. And there's this thing called email. So I got in the habit of sort of getting people's email and following it up with a quick follow-up with some additional suggestions, where when I was off the desk, and a few of us did this, where I was off the desk, I could just sort of think to myself, what would be, that would be the things that I couldn't think of in the situation, I could send along. People loved that. And so when Form-Based Reader's Advisory started to be big, we definitely wanted to do it. Our patrons love being helped in the stacks. Many of our patrons, however, are interacting increasingly with us this way, either not coming into the library as much, and frankly, you can have a perfectly lovely and meaningful relationship with your library and never go into it at this point, because we've got, digital books and things like that. So it's important that we reach those people, and they do deserve better than Amazon. Sadly, for most people in the world, this is what Reader's Advisory means to them. Customers who bought this also bought. That's what they think it is. And it's horrible. It really sucks. I participated in somebody's master's thesis where they studied this. They took a bunch of these sort of automated engines. Which Book is another one. And this one's kind of fun. It's fun to go play around with, whichbook.com, I think. But they studied automated reader's advisory, and they compared it to like real life reader's advisory, and it was just like, no, contest. Machines can't really draw the right connections, and they tend to just run right off the tracks in really bizarre ways. Even though I am the human and I'm sort of talking about the steam shovel, nevertheless, there's plenty of evidence that suggests that the steam shovel can't really do as well as a human. This was a really influential article when it comes to forms-based reader's advisory, this one by Neil Hollins called The Model for Interactive Reader's Advisory Service. And basically, he looked at a lot of aspects of what we do with readers and called them faulty assumptions. I'll just kind of swiftly go through some of them. Like, for example, will they even interact with us at all? Whether they come into libraries or when they're in libraries, will they actually approach us? We love to say, of course, we have an open door policy, we're friendly, we're la 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 la, but the public doesn't necessarily always see us in the same light that we think of ourselves in. And there are things we can do to try and counteract that. Put up a sign and all, basic things to say, hey, we do this, please use us in this way. I love, by the way, has anybody in their library use shelf talkers? It's a super practical little thing. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, when you go to a good independent bookstore, for example, right? And you may have gone to an independent bookstore and thought, oh, well, that's really cool. Bookstores can do that because they get big stacks of one title. We can't really do that in libraries because we're different. And it is kind of labor intensive to do it for individual titles. We've done some of that to organize displays around it. But you can do it for an author, pick an author that's got a lot of works, typically shelved, Alan First or Hemingway or anybody, Alice Munro, and do a shelf talker that talks about them. Or read-alikes. We have one in our like Dean Koontz area and our James Patterson area, so like you're looking for them and they're not here, well here's some other people to try, that kind of thing. But one of the most important things if you do this is they're signed. They're not the library. I mean, we do print them off, we don't handwrite them, but nevertheless, because our light levels are abysmal. At night, it's really, really hard to read, so that's why it's yellow and black, because it's really hard to see in our library, it's terrible. This is being recorded, isn't it? That's okay. That's a non-controversial statement, actually. They know our light levels are terrible. But the most important thing is that the staff signs it. So if you work in a big kind of impersonal hangar of a library like I do, but as people who don't necessarily interact with staff just kind of keep seeing, oh, David likes this, oh, Misha suggests that, oh, Linda likes this, and you kind of begin to get this idea that this place is somehow haunted by actual human beings who read and might want to talk with you about it. This is not just marketing the collection, but it's marketing staff. It's like that ad campaign, and we really need to do that as much as possible. Will they get the right person? And I'm not just talking about that horrible, horrible person that you don't want anyone ever to interact with in your library, if you have one, but anybody, actually. Perfectly good readers' advisors, nevertheless, have weak areas where they're kind of like, I really wish you were talking with the person who's coming on 2 hours from now. Well, forms-based advisory is a way around that, because the question is static and you get to share it and you can get it to the right person. But even if you are the right person, it's not always, we've had those times, maybe at the end of the day or whatever, where it's just like, wow, I want a do-over. And again, forms-based kind of gives you the opportunity to do that. Will there be enough time at the busy desk? To read articles about readers' advisory, sometimes it seems they envision this world as like a platonic ideal where it's like there's always enough time and space to talk and da-da-da, and it's not what libraries are really like much of the time, which is very frantic and a lot of pressing needs all kind of pushing in the same direction, or different directions. Will we be able to use the resources we need to find good books? If there's one thing you take from me, it is my love of tools. When I first got a job as a reader's advisor, over 10 years ago, I was terrified. I was so scared. And so the first thing I did was, like, my first paycheck was I rushed out and I bought all kinds of different print reading guides. I still have tons of them. I love tools. Some of them are very shareable with the public, some not so much. Some of them are a good method of triage. You park somebody with a book on romances while you're dealing with that security situation and then you get back to them and whatever. But when you're doing forms-based advisory, you have a little bit more time to yourself, whether that's off desk or maybe at the end of the day when things are quiet or whatever, you can consult these resources. I love tools. There are so many good tools out there that help us do better readers' advisory. So please, if you're not somebody who ever uses books or databases for that matter, and no, this isn't a novelist workshop, and and I don't actually work for them now. But it really is an extraordinary resource if you have access to it through your own library or somebody else's, and there are some very skilled ways to use it that can make you kind of amazing with your patrons. If you're somebody who's kind of like, yeah, I don't know, check it out. Really, you can do amazing stuff with it. And will you have enough documentation for effective follow-up? And this is not something we've done a good job of in our library, but it can be. You can use forms-based advisory to create static profiles where you can sort of keep track of what people are reading. We're government, so I know, and I assume this is an issue here too, we're very reluctant to invade people's privacy, but there's ways of getting people to opt in. But I think that I usually think of this in terms of that patron who comes to the library just infrequently enough that they walk up to the desk, it's like been a month since they were there, and you're like, oh, I have no idea, yeah, what is it you like again? And you have to kind of start from scratch. And so there's ways of using form-based advisory to try and kind of get a sense, keep track of that stuff. Other things we found that are really useful about doing this, it's a great tool for collaboration because the question is, you know, it sits there. You can work on it. You can share it with other people. You can get it to that other staff member who you think might, you know, oh, I misspelled collaboration. That's embarrassing. For that same reason, it's a good training tool. And oftentimes a written question is less threatening to somebody who's maybe a little intimidated by reader's advisory. It's not somebody staring them in the face. You can actually look at it, you can do peer review, you can kind of discuss it. If you're working with someone who's trying to get those skills, you can work with them, you can mentor. We've done some buddy system stuff with this that's worked really well. You can also then, the question exists, you can, if your library okays it, you can share it anonymized out there in the world. Be like, hey look, there's this thing we do called Reader's Advisory, look how cool it is. Just doing it online markets the fact that you do the service. So many people who use our online Reader's Advisory service are like, I had no idea that librarians would do this for me. And it's not that it's online, it's that it's Reader's Advisory. And people just adore this service, and they tell us so, and they tell us so in writing, which is really handy for preaching to the powers that be. I'm going to speed through some slides, so I apologize. I've got lots and lots of slides of people talking about how much they love this service, but just take it from me, they absolutely love this service. This is the Williamsburg Regional Library. They're kind of the best known form out there. They're at one end of the extreme in terms of length, and it's going to seem like I'm making fun of them, but this is their form. It's got some stuff about who you are. It's got demographics, which I actually kind of object to, not just the sex and age, but race and ethnicity. I don't want to know that about a patron. In fact, that's actually a plus, I think, to forms-based advisory. You can sort of ignore that, which is great, so I wouldn't ask for it. They've got, you know, what kind of genres do you like? What kind of genres do you like? Tell us about stuff you like. Tell us about stuff you don't like. Tell us about the kind of tone of book you like on a 7-point scale. What's your sense of, where do you want the book to focus on? What's your sense of humor of all these different kinds of humor choices? And on and on and on. It's a very long form. Now, I'm not dissing it. It's clearly one kind of experience. It's like comparing like a 12-person book group and a 500-person author event. It's not that one is good or bad. This is a different kind of experience. Clearly it's much more intense and it takes a lot more time, and they've raised the bar for their patrons. Here's our form. That's it. Basically, who are you? And then the text that we used is basically the gambit for Reader's Advisory, as short as we can make it. Tell our librarians about a few books and or authors you've enjoyed and what you liked about them. Also, feel free to tell us about books you haven't liked and why. What are you in the mood to read next? So there we are. That's kind of the basic. Those are the opening things we play with for Reader's Advisory. We kept this short on purpose because we wanted the form to be an all ages form. We use this for kids, teens, adults. It's one form for all. And then the questions get routed to the appropriate staff. So we wanted it just to be real simple. The folks at Williamsburg on their thing boast that they've done in the past like 12 years over 1,000 of their form, that long form. We've done over 3,500 in the past 2 years. So obviously there's a trade-off, but we're reaching a lot of people. This is what we get from patrons. We just use what we had to hand, which is Question Point, our reference stuff. We didn't build anything for this because there was nobody to build it, and so we just put it together. But this is what you know, a 14-year-old is telling us about their love of romance. So here's an author saying, okay, here's a little bit of what I like, the short list, and this is their full. Not everybody writes at that degree of length. Some of them are quite short, some of them are long. And then we respond with an email. Here's a response to that particular patron that we try and sort of mirror what they gave us. It's just like a conversation. So if they gave us a lot, if they really kind of soul searched, then we're going to spend maybe a little extra time addressing that. If they just gave us, you know, lead child, then I might write a really short thing. Okay, here's 5 people I think you'll like, let me know. You know, it might be really short because they didn't invest a lot in it. And then we send a link back that goes to a list in our catalog. We use BiblioCommons so we can create lists there, so that's how we do that. Here is the behind the scenes, and here shows where librarians can work together and collaborate on a question. We give ourselves 4 days to work on a question. This is what a list actually looks like in our catalog that we sent. Here's somebody, her mom's 91 years old, her vision's going, she loves World War II espionage, she reads on a Kindle because of the vision thing. So here's 5 different things for her that we had for Kindle. We then, as I mentioned, can share these questions on our blog. If you go to our blog Shelf Talk and just search for your next 5 books, you'll see, we haven't been doing this lately, but you'll see a bunch of anonymized questions and answers, and you can sort of see how that works, and that helps in turn to market the service. And I've already made that boast. But the main thing is that people just adore it. And again, they tell us so in writing. I feel like I won the literary. I love you and everyone who helped out with this. These were not like, we didn't search long and hard to find these particular examples. We have 3 different Word files, each for the different year that we've done, and they're each really big. And every time somebody says more than just thank you, we stash that in the file, just so we've got this compendia of people raving and raving about this service. It's not, but remember, it's not that we're doing it online in this rinky-dink stupid little form. That's the thing. It's that we're doing reader's advisory. But when you do it in this way, you let people know that you're doing it. People who may not even use your library, they can kind of catch on to that. You also then, on the supply side, are putting yourself on notice. If you're putting it in your window, hey, we do this, and here it is in black and white, and we've given ourselves 4 days, and you're going to get an answer. There's no hiding from Reader's Advisory. You've got to do it. And so we have a team of people that work on these. It's not sort of everybody on staff, but we have invited people into that team who have an interest in that, and as I said, paired them with maybe some more experienced Reader's Advisors to help kind of make them comfortable working on these questions. But there's always the capability of getting help because of the format. I don't know, I was going to say that I think in our practice it's so sort of intense and individual when we're talking one-on-one with a patron. I mean, sometimes we get to collaborate a little around the desk, but it's often a very sort of private thing. And that's kind of special, but it's also maybe a little unhealthy. I think it's useful to be able to kind of crack these open and share them. Lots of other libraries are doing this kind of service. And I've been trying to compile a list, and I will send it along to Jenny of some other libraries, at least down in the States, who are doing it. Well, actually, Edmonton does a great job with this. They've been doing it for a long, long time. They've got a really kind of cool form. This is Cuyahoga. They have 2, they basically solved the issue of do you do what Seattle did or do you do what Williamsburg did by doing both. They have a quick ready one that's like 3 for 3, they call it. Tell us 3 books, we'll give you 3 back. And then they have a more involved sort of personal reader form that's a little bit more in depth. So that's an interesting idea. Here's some stuff from Edmonton. I'm a big admirer of theirs, and they built a kind of a database that actually keeps some of the book linkages and spits them back out at you, whether you're creating a list or whether you're a patron. It'll say, while you're waiting for your list, here's some things that other people got recommended who like the authors you like. I think that's really smart. Multnomah has one that's kind of a lot like ours. It's fairly short. Okay, social media. I guess I should do Q&A. I got like, what, 5 minutes left, 10 minutes left? How much time? Okay, 5 minutes. I'm sorry, that's an awkward question to answer. 10 minutes, because you said 45 and I came up with that. Okay. 5.
15.
10. Okay, social media. This next slide I'm really embarrassed about because it's a braggy slide, and I showed it actually up in Prince George. It's since been updated, but it basically is to show that for our population size, we do a really good job with Facebook. That's all it's to show that we do a really good job with Facebook. We have a lot of people not who just friend us, but who stick around and use us and love us. Okay. So here's some of the kind of neat readers advisory stuff that we've been doing with this. Librarians are standing by. Tell us about a book you liked. We'll give you a book you'll love. We do Facebook Readers Advisory days or afternoons. We put them out there. We gather a little team of librarians and we put it out on our Facebook page that we're going to be doing it. We used to do whole days. Now we're kind of going a little bit more towards just an afternoon. And here's why I love this. One, it's a good, authentic use of Facebook to do what we do in public, which I think is very valuable. But two is the way this unfolds, okay? Here's a patron. My dad loves Cormac McCarthy, William Faulkner, and the outdoors. Thank you very much. The Seattle Public Library, you can see, is the little blue logo there, and we responded at 10:35, but not before a patron, just a person out there, said, oh, I have an idea. Here's something they might like. Then we responded, not having seen that, and we gave our suggestions. And then we noticed, oh, a real person did, oh, we want to encourage that. So we wrote back and said, hey, yeah, those are good ideas too, Catherine. And Catherine said, oh, well, you know, I can't really help myself, but here's some other ideas. And then yet another person jumped in and said, oh, you know what's a really good book for that? This is the way to use social media for Readers Advisory. This is replicating in an online environment what we want to do in our libraries. And in fact, what we're not always able to do, because of privacy issues or whatever, or sometimes it's awkward, but out here we can just do, we can talk about books and people can join in. And that's the kind of thing that Readers Advisory is, so it's perfect for that. Here's just another spin on it, gift books. So you're looking for books for gift. We'll do a Facebook event around that. Here's what it looks like behind the scenes. If you're going to do it, you've got to clear a little bit of desk time and have a few people who are really good with this kind of stuff, and then they can just come and take the questions and spit it back out. I won't get too much into details, but I'm happy to help with those at some other time. This is some of my wonderful colleagues behind the scenes at the library. This is just some demographics for our Facebook. It tends to skew a little bit younger than Facebook in general, which of course is a nice thing to see. Okay, a lot of uses of Facebook are this is two examples of frankly, really mercenary tactics. These are really cheap, shoddy questions. Lots of people liked it, but this is not, I don't think, how you keep people sort of like, click like if you like to read. It's like, oh, come on. But sometimes people really do love, if you get a little bit beyond the facile stuff into something that really engages with people. I love this one. What's the saddest book you've ever read? We posted this last September 14th. Over 12,000 people saw it, and over 200 people responded to it. And again, in the comment stream, conversations broke out. And that, I think, is the best part. Somebody said, oh, this book is really sad. Somebody else said, oh, you made it through the whole trilogy. Yet another person said, oh, I couldn't read that, and a little conversation broke out. That is what I think we really want to try and go for and make happen, find ways to make that happen. Because then people own this. This is like a place where they would go and talk with other people, like a library. We do, obviously, some of our staff-created content we feature out there this is a list in the catalog in BiblioCommons, a Downton Abbey reading list. This is to show some of the power that sharing things on Facebook has, however. We posted this Downton Abbey list, this was a little while back ago, and then I hate, the whole bean county, people are always asking, well, do you keep track of the circulation of every book you suggest on the blind? It's like hundreds and hundreds of books. No, we don't keep track of that. But every now and then it's good to take a little test core and see. And what you see is, yeah, it has a huge effect. These, some of these books that spiked, like this one by Eva Ibbotson, she's kind of a forgotten author, and a bunch of people suddenly went for that book right after we shared this list on Facebook. So it was neat to see it having an effect. Readers collaborating on book lists. Hi parents, we're looking for children's music that doesn't make adults want to climb the walls. Suggestions, right? Then 150 people chimed in with their suggestions. Great, that's fine. But then you have to do something with that. So we created a list in our catalog based on people's suggestions. And again, this presupposes these kinds of catalogs where you can do a bunch of stuff. Brief digression. But how many people are BiblioCommons librarians? Okay, so quite a few. Yeah. That's what we're using now. These are just some other things that you can do. I love this actually. Multnomah and some other libraries, and we're going to do these lists called while you're waiting lists, where you just do a read-alike list on a really hot thing that's spiking with your holds, and make sure to include that thing in all its versions on your list, so that when people go to that item, 50 Shades of Grey or whatever, they're in the thing, it says, while you're waiting for that, here's our suggestions. great sort of point of need way of using book lists in the catalog itself. And you can throw in videos and all kinds of other fun stuff. I think that's cool. We do book talk videos, and the catalog is a great place to share those. And again, it's all about getting the personality, the personhood back into the machines. Skip that. So back to that patron-generated list. Then we'll take a list like that our patrons created, that we crowdsourced, we'll put it out on our blog, and we will share it back to our patrons via Facebook. Thank you for your ideas. We made a list for you. Here it is. Like, we actually care what you thought, and we did something with it. That, I think, is part of why things are going well for us. Finally, a digression, and this may be the only truly innovative thing I'm going to talk about, because I don't think anybody's actually doing it. This is a site that's dead now. It's called Questionland. It exists. This was part of The Stranger, which is this alternative news weekly in Seattle. It died because the two people who ran it went away or something. So it didn't die it was a very, very popular site. It's a social Q&A site, okay? Yahoo Answers, that kind of thing. People ask questions, anybody can answer. And it had a meritocratic structure. You could get stars and things like that. So that if people liked your answers, you got some expertise. In this case, in Questionland, it was mushrooms. If people liked your response to their answer, they would give you a mushroom. Well, there was an area of this dedicated to book recommendations. It was started by the book editor of The Stranger, and he went up and said, hey, I'm a guy, I know about books, so just tell me what you like to read, and I'll tell you what to read. But he doesn't run the show. It's social Q&A, so anybody can answer. So some of my friends and I, my librarian friends and I said, well, heck, anybody can play, let's play. Let's go and kind of keep track of this and start answering questions. And we swiftly rose through the ranks of experts there in this area on this social Q&A site because of the quality of the responses we were giving. And now, these slides don't do it justice because there was a lot of conversation, there was a lot of back and forth like you saw in those Facebook slides. And that was great. I think there's a wonderful atmosphere for doing Reader's Advisory because it is back fencey and conversational. And it's fun to engage with people and not be like, we're the experts, we're the mavens. You know, we'll tell you, you know, that's part of it, but it also is kind of givey and takey. So I absolutely loved this because it was a way for us to go do what we do out there in public and not, we didn't have to brag on ourselves, we were just doing our jobs in public, and it was like, wow, that's impressive. Those guys, look at the librarians, they're like blowing everybody else away, they're really good. That, I just love that, and I think finding new ways to do that. So I would love to set up some kind of social Q&A site around books and reading. I'm not sure what the scope of it is. It might be something that we explore doing through BiblioCommons, because we have all these different member libraries out there, and that's a really broad thing, but it also brings it right back into the library, into our catalog. So I'm trying to put a bug in the ear of their newest employee, Stephanie Chase, who was formerly of Seattle Public Library, to see if maybe we can get them to underwrite something like that. But this response from a patron, I cannot imagine a more valuable resource than a librarian. Thank you so much. Blah, 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 blah. Again, that's what we want to be happening spontaneously all over. I think that's it. I'm going to just burn through the rest of these slides. They don't do this at the end of TED Talks, do they? Blogging, you should blog. Twitter, okay. I am done. But I'm going to be around for the rest of the day. I'm not going to take Q&A because it's time to move on. But I'm around and I would love to talk with you, and I'm hanging out in Vancouver till like 5:30. Thank you so much for having me. It was great to be here.